How does a major cryptocurrency project, one with millions of users, actually go beyond just the mining part? How does it push for real-world utility, real adoption? That's the big question, isn't it? And that's exactly the lens we're using today for our deep dive. We've got a bunch of sources here, all focused on the Pi network and what they've been up to lately. We're talking about their 2025 hackathon updates, some new ways the community can engage, and honestly, some pretty surprising examples of actual use cases emerging.
Yeah, our mission today is to cut through the noise, basically. We want to quickly pull out what really matters here. What's the core idea behind this hackathon? What are the crucial things required from users? They call them pioneers. There were some high stakes involved. And we need to grasp this new dynamic where the community is like literally staking their Pi coins to boost project visibility. It's interesting. But first, maybe a quick reminder. Pi Network, launched back in 2019 by some Stanford PhDs. The whole idea was simplicity. Make it easy, make it green. Let people mine Pi just by opening an app on their phone, pressing a button once a day. That simplicity, well, that's been the core appeal from the start.
Okay, simplicity is the hook. Got it. But let's unpack that a bit. Once you're in, once you commit to being a pioneer, what are the actual demands? What do you have to do? Well, the basic loop seems easy enough. Open the app, tap the button once every 24 hours. Simple. And the sources mention ways to increase your mining speed, mostly by growing your network, right? Referrals seem key. They even talk about like a 25% boost just for bringing in someone trusted. So network growth is baked in.
Right, but that's the easy part. It gets more serious after that initial period. After a pioneer hits 30 mining sessions, the network requires something pretty significant: identity verification. And actually, I need to pause here because the source material uses this really odd term, know your credit. Let's be clear. In the blockchain world, KYC always means know your customer. That's the standard identity check, and that's definitely what's happening here. It's vital for them, to stop people creating tons of fake accounts, Sybil attacks.
Okay. Know your credit sounds like a translation thing, or maybe just confusing jargon. Good clarification. Yeah. So it's know your customer. And the stakes seem really high for getting this right. The sources are blunt about it. If you signed up with a wrong name, or maybe a fake one, and you fail verification, you face a hefty penalty, like a 20% loss of your Pi.
Exactly, a 20% loss. And that tells you something important, analytically speaking. By putting such a sharp penalty on failing identity checks, Pi Network is clearly signaling they prioritize ecosystem integrity. They want real verified users more than just raw numbers early on, which is, kind of rare these days. Usually it's growth at all costs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Build a solid foundation first. Verified, engaged users are kind of the prerequisite if you want the PiCoin's value to grow based on real use, not just speculation. And the focus on users creating and using stuff.
Well, that leads us straight into the big engine for that utility. The 2025 Hackathon. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, right? The Hackathon 2025 is apparently at its halfway point. The dates are pretty recent. Teams had to submit midpoint updates by September 19th. And the whole thing wraps up October 15th.
Yeah, that timeline is aggressive.
It really is. Developing and refining apps ready for the mainnet in that short window. What does that tight schedule tell us about what the core team is really pushing for? Speed, rapid integration, getting proofs of concept out there fast. The main objective is pretty broad, actually. It's focused on how the external connectivity of their open network can expand the utility of something they call the Pi controller.
Wait, hang on. Pi controller? That sounds like classic tech jargon. What are we talking about here? Is it about linking the mobile app to external websites or APIs? Or is it actual hardware? What does expanding utility mean for, like, an average pioneer?
Yeah, good question. It's not really hardware. Think of the Pi controller as the core Pi blockchain features you can access inside their Pi browser. So expanding utility means letting developers build apps that connect those internal Pi features and maybe authentication, or making payments with external real-world services that might never have heard of Pi before but could now accept Pi payments or use Pioneer identities seamlessly. And to keep everyone motivated, keep the buzz going, they put out a Midpoint showcase video. It highlighted some of the projects that are currently being developed.
Okay, but hold on. If they're showcasing specific projects mid-competition, doesn't that kind of influence how people see them? Especially if there's community staking involved, which we'll get to. How do they stop that inspiration turning into, unconscious bias? There are prizes on the line, right?
That's the balancing act, exactly. And they seem aware of it. The sources are very, very clear on this point. Being in that showcase video, it's purely informational, For inspiration. It absolutely does not affect the official judging or the final ratings. It doesn't predict who wins. That distinction is critical if they want the judging to be seen as fair and based purely on merit.
Okay, I get the intention. Keep judging separate. But while the network's running its mainnet, and this hackathon is moving to its final stages, they rolled out something else, didn't they? A new way for pioneers to get involved, like directly with these submitted apps. It sounds like they are embracing community influence, even if the official judging stays separate.
That's right. It connects to the bigger picture using the community's power for, well, visibility. This new mechanism lets pioneers see the full list of every single app submitted to the hackathon, right there in the Pi browser. And crucially, they can now use their Pi to stake on the projects they like, the ones they want to support. Now, the purpose of the staking is very specific, according to the sources. It's purely about increasing the visibility of these apps within the Pi ecosystem. It's a way to actively back the creators who are building things for the network. It's basically taking their existing ecosystem directory staking feature and applying it directly to these hackathon entries.
Right, so if I'm a pioneer and I see an app I think is brilliant, I can put some Pi behind it to help it get noticed. How would I actually do that? Where do I find this list of apps?
It's designed to be easy. You go into the Pi browser, find a Pay Apps tab, then look for mainnet apps under the Browse by Category section. And from there, you just apply the Hackathon 25 filter. Boom, you see all the entries. But again, we have to hammer this home. The governance principle. The ranking that comes out of this staking, how much Pi is staked on each app, that's just about popularity and visibility. It does not influence the official hackathon outcome. The winners are still judged solely on the technical criteria, the utility criteria, all the stuff they set out beforehand. They're trying hard to keep those two things separate, popularity and judged merit.
That really does set up an interesting tension, though. What if, developer builds something technically amazing, but the community just doesn't get it or doesn't stake on it? Low visibility. How does meritocracy help it survive if it can't find users?
Yeah.
It's a tricky. But okay, let's shift gears. We've talked about the engine, the hackathon driving development. What about the output? Is this utility push actually leading to, well, anything concrete yet? To answer that, we need to look beyond the code towards actual commerce. And that brings us to something called the PiBazar. Yeah, the PiBazar. The source describes it as the first community bazaar in Europe where you can sell products to each other for the cryptocurrency Pi. That sounds like a big step, moving Pi from just being mined on a phone to actually being used to buy and sell things.
It is a big step, and what's really striking is just how broad the categories of products are on this bazaar. It shows how far the idea of utility has already stretched. We're not just talking digital collectibles or something simple. The listings include things like automoto, so cars and motorcycles, jewelry, watches, valuables, services work, like actual job listings or services offered for Pi, and then, yeah, the categories that really raise eyebrows: alcohol, cigarettes, and even 18-plus items.
Whoa, hold on. Alcohol and cigarettes. And 18 plus SEV. For Pi coins you mine by tapping a button, that list, it sounds less like a typical crypto community forum and more like, I don't know, a full-blown Craigslist, but running entirely on Pi.
It kind of does, doesn't it? And the implication there from an analysis standpoint is pretty significant. Seeing that kind of commerce, especially for potentially regulated goods or major assets like cars, it suggests real transaction volume. It suggests they might be successfully creating a closed-loop economy where Pi is the actual medium of exchange, bypassing traditional financial systems for a whole range of goods and services.
And it seems like they're building the support structure for it too. The sources mention things listed right alongside the bazaar, like a Pi Academy for learning, a detailed FAQ section, links out to social media, Spotify, Bluesky are mentioned. It suggests they know this real-world commerce brings complexity, and they're trying to build the educational and community scaffolding needed to handle it. Okay, so wrapping this part up, what's the big picture takeaway here? It feels like the Pi network ecosystem is intensely focused right now on creating real utility. They're using the hackathon as the R&D engine, essentially. And at the same time, they're giving the massive community tools, like staking, to influence the visibility and maybe the direction of these new projects.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. So what does it all mean, end of the day? The overall story these updates tell is one of connection. Connecting the high-level technological goal, achieving useful open network functionality with very real, very practical, sometimes even messy real-world use cases. And the PiBazar, with its diverse and sometimes surprising listings, is probably the most concrete evidence of that connection actually happening. Which leads to a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on. We've established that the community can use staking to seriously boost the visibility of projects they love, give them a huge signal boost. But we also know their choices, their staking, has zero official impact on who actually wins the hackathon, based on the judges' criteria. So how effectively can the core team really manage that split between pure meritocratic judging and this decentralized, community-driven popularity? What happens down the line if the project judged best gets ignored by the community's staking, or if the most popular, highly staked project is seen as technically weak by the judges? How does that potential conflict play out for network adoption? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. That brings us to the end of this deep dive into the Pi ecosystem, the 2025 hackathon, and the push for utility. Thanks for joining us.